Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. So I'm back with another video where we're honoring the life, work, and legacy of the man, the myth, the legend, the man who inspired Marcus Garvey to come to America, the Wizard of Tuskegee. We're talking about none other than Booker Taliaferro Washington, born April 5th, 1856 in Hellsford, Virginia. Booker T. Washington was the preeminent Black leader of the late 19th, early 20th century, an educator, author, speaker, and advisor to several U.S. presidents. He was a dominant leader in the African American community and a contemporary leader also of the Black elite. However, when we talk about Booker T. Washington's backstory, if you haven't had the chance, you should read his seminal autobiography, Up from Slavery, which I've had the pleasure of reading, in which he talks about how being born into slavery to a slave mother, the victim or survivor of sexual assault, he had a white father. Many people don't know that Booker T. Washington was a mulatto. But with that being said, Booker T. Washington, self-educated, went to Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia, worked as a domestic for a white family, and was later picked to found and create Tuskegee University, which is now university, which was, at the time was a normal school, but he was, of course, the principal. However, Booker T. Washington is known for basically three things. I would argue. One, he is the preeminent standard bearer of what it means to be a Black conservative. We know nowadays many people, when we think of Black conservatives, we think of one Candace Owens. We think of individuals aligned with Fox News who are what they would call, many would call, inorganic Black conservatives rather than organic Black conservatives. And what I mean by that is these are individuals who are typically financially endorsed. They're financially supported into promoting conservative values and oftentimes shitting on the Black community in America, if you just want to make it plain. Number two, you can't mention Booker T. Washington without mentioning his rivalry, of course, with W.E.B Dubois, right, in which they debated publicly, oftentimes insulting each other regarding what was the best mode to ensure African-American progress in America. Was it to focus on a classical education and pushing for political rights and the right of suffrage, or was it what Booker T. Washington argued, in which we should focus on what? Industrial labor, right? In which he said you can have as much dignity as tilling the field as it is to write a poem, and focusing on economic entrepreneurship and independence, rather than focusing on the classical education and agitating for political rights. Many people consider him, Booker T. Washington, a sellout after his speech, which was deemed the Atlanta Compromise, was given at the height of the first Nadir in 1895 in Atlanta, Georgia. So for those of you who do not know, the first Nadir is the period of race relations after Reconstruction that was coined by the Pan-Africanist historian and Howard University professor Rayford Logan, who coined this term due to the proliferation and deterioration of African-American, civil and human rights in America, right? So this is during the height of lynching, the height of Jim Crow, where we literally were living in terror, domestic terror, and of course, second-class citizenship. So many people argue that he was a sellout. As many of us may know, his Tuskegee Institute was very successful due to what white philanthropic support. But what people do not know is that secretly, he advocated and funded many political movements to advocate for the rights of African Americans. There's even a story that he talks about in his memoir, Up from Slavery, where there was a young man who had been accused of a crime. And he came to Booker T. Washington on the campus of Tuskegee and asked would he hide him. And he said no. He turned him in to the jailers. He was then booked, but he paid his bail, then sent him on a train to New York City. And many people didn't know, why did he take this stance? Why was he seeking to be an accommodationist, as many people argue? And the reason was they were living in the height of white supremacist Jim Crow South. And so his focus was on simply keeping people alive. And he knew in the situation with the young man that if he hit him on campus, they would have burned the entire campus down. So he turned him into the police, paid his bail, and then sent him on his way. And so I think we have to have a more of a fuller and more robust view of Booker T. Washington, the legacy he left, particularly of building strong African-American institutions. We know there are a number of issues here in the American society that we tend to look at and, of course, accurately have a concern for. However, one of the things that we could do on our end, because I've always mentioned that we have an internal as well as an external enemy, and one of the things that we can do to ensure a better quality of life is to build strong institutions. And that is something that Booker T. Washington did. Also, we know that Booker T. Washington did have a Pan-Africanist view of the world, as he took issue with issues that were taking place on the continent of Africa during the height of colonialism, and in Haiti, particularly during the Haitian occupation, the United States occupation of Haiti between 1915 and 1934. So just want to take time out of the day to honor the man, the myth, the legend, the wizard of Tuskegee, none other than Booker Taliaferro Washington. If you haven't had the chance to read this memoir, Up from Slavery, make sure that you do. Until next time, peace.